Hello and welcome. If you got a computing exam coming up, you are in the perfect spot. We're about to do a really fast, high-impact review of the 4 key computing laws you absolutely, positively have to know.
Okay, so let's get right into the most important question. How do you actually turn knowing these facts into getting top marks? Because here's the secret. Just knowing the name of an act and the year it was made, that's not going to cut it for the top grades. The real key is applying these laws to scenarios they give you in the exam.
You see, exam boards are all about what they call level of response answers. And that's just a fancy way of saying they don't want you to just list off a bunch of memorized facts. They want to see you connect that knowledge to the specific problem in the question. Application, seriously, is everything.
So to get you there, here's our game plan. We're going to start with how digital stuff is protected. Then we'll talk about digital crime. After that, we'll get into the weeds on personal data rules, tackle the big debate of security versus privacy, and then wrap it all up with a final checklist so you can walk into that exam feeling confident.
First up, let's rewind the clock to 1988. The digital world was really just starting to take shape, and people needed a way to protect the new things they were creating online.
So the core idea of this act is pretty simple. If you make something original, could be a song, a logo, even a chunk of code, this law makes sure nobody can just steal it or use it without asking you first. And here's the best part. Copyright is totally automatic. You create it, it's protected. You don't have to fill out any forms.
Now check out this timeline, because the evolution here is key. The act started in '88, right? But the really crucial bit for us in computing came in 1992. See, before then, it was kind of a gray area. Was software code protected, like a novel or a song? This update made it crystal clear. Yes, code is a literary work. And just like that, developers got the same automatic protection for their programs. That was a huge deal.
Okay, so just 2 years later, in 1990, the law had to catch up again. More computers meant, you guessed it, more computer crime. This next act basically laid down the rules of the road for what's legal and what's not when you're on a computer system.
The absolute easiest way to remember this for your exam is to think of this analogy. The Computer Misuse Act is basically the law against 3 things: digital trespassing, which is going somewhere you're not supposed to, digital theft, which is getting in with the plan to do something illegal, and digital vandalism, which is actually changing or breaking stuff. Trespassing, theft, and vandalism.
And this breaks it down perfectly. These are the 3 levels of offense. So level 1 is just getting in without permission. You find a teacher's password and use it to poke around. Level 2 is when you get in with a criminal plan. You're not just looking, you access the markbook because you intend to change your grade. And level 3, that's when you actually do it. You go in and change that B to an A. And as you can imagine, the punishment gets a whole lot more serious as you climb that ladder.
All right, now we get to the really big one. I mean, this legislation impacts pretty much every single thing you do online. It's all about how your personal information is protected.
So, to get your head around this, you need to know the 3 main players in the game. First, there's the data subject. That's you. It's the person the data is about. Then you have the data controller. That's the company, like a social media site that decides what data to collect and what to do with it. And finally, there's the information commissioner. Think of them as the referee, the independent group that makes sure the controllers are playing by the rules.
The law also makes this really important distinction. There's personal data. That's anything that can identify you, like your name, your address, that kind of thing. But then there's sensitive data. This stuff gets extra legal protection, because if it gets misused, it could cause some serious harm or discrimination. We're talking about things like your political views, your ethnicity, or even your fingerprint.
Okay, look closely here, because this shows how things changed from the old Data Protection Act in '98 to the modern GDPR. A lot of the core ideas are the same. You know, data has to be accurate, can't be kept forever, stuff like that. But GDPR added some game changers. See on the right? The first principle now explicitly includes transparency. Companies can't just secretly use your data, they have to be open about it. But the biggest deal by far is that last principle, accountability. Under the old rules, it was kind of up to the referee to catch companies breaking the rules. Now, with GDPR, the company itself, the data controller, has to prove it's following the law. The burden of proof completely shifted. That was massive.
And that brings us to our last big piece of law, from the year 2000. It's called the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, or RIPA for short. And this one, well, this one sits right in the middle of one of today's biggest arguments. Where do we draw the line between keeping the country safe and our own personal right to privacy?
So what RIPA does in a nutshell is it gives certain public bodies, we're talking police, intelligence services, the legal power to carry out surveillance. They can intercept communications like your emails or phone calls, but only for very specific and serious reasons like fighting terrorism or preventing major crimes.
So what does that actually mean in the real world? It means the police can get a warrant to listen in on phone calls. It means they can go to your internet provider and legally demand data about what you've been doing online. And it even means that those internet companies have to build their systems in a way that makes the surveillance possible in the first place.
And here it is. This is the central debate, the question you need to be ready to discuss in an exam. Is RIPA a vital tool that we absolutely need to stop criminals and protect national security? Or is it a fundamental invasion of our privacy? There's no easy answer, and you need to be able to argue both sides of it.
Whew, okay. We've covered the 4 big acts. Now, let's tie it all together and get back to what we said at the start, turning this knowledge into top exam marks.
Think of this table as your mental cheat sheet. When you're in the exam and the pressure's on, you need to quickly figure out which law fits the scenario. Is the question about protecting an idea? That's copyright. Is it about someone hacking a system? That's computer misuse. Is it about how a company is using someone's personal info? Data protection and GDPR. Or is it about government surveillance? That's got to be RIPA.
So let's run through a classic exam-style question. A social media company is using its user data to target people with political ads. What are the legal and ethical issues here? Just take a second and think. Which of the laws we just talked about is screaming out at you?
This is exactly how you build a fantastic answer. First, you nail the law. This is clearly a data protection and GDPR issue, right? Then, you apply the principles. Was the data used fairly and transparently? Was it collected for this specified purpose of political advertising? Then you bring in the ethics. Is it right to influence voters this way? You talk about the rights of the data subject, you, and then, this is key, you wrap it up with a clear conclusion that you've justified with all your points.
So, to finish up, here is your final check-in. Before you go into that exam, ask yourself, can I define the 3 different offenses under the Computer Misuse Act? Can I list at least 4 principles of GDPR? Can I explain both sides of the RIPA controversy? If you can nod your head and say yes to those, you're not just going to pass, you're going to do great. Good luck.